Joining us to discuss this and more is the author and former advisor to Tony Blair, Ed Husain, who joins us live from Madrid. Also joining me will be the journalist and broadcaster Yasmin Alibhai-Brown. Ed, let me start with you, if I may. Do you think Shamima Begum has a right to be a British citizen?
Sadly, Michelle, I don't think so. I think being a British citizen has rights and responsibilities. Yes, you have the freedoms, but you also have responsibilities that go with them. And the first responsibility is to your fellow citizens and to your country. Yes, she was 15. Yes, she was young. Yes, she was vulnerable. I buy all of that. But we can't deny the fact that she's gone out there and there are serious allegations of her being part of multiple operations against British and other nationals. She supported ISIS openly. And for all of those reasons, bringing her back naively at this point would send a message that Britain is a soft spot, not just for her, but for the tens of thousands of other people that share that mindset. And just one last point, my new book that has just come out, Among the Mosques, I've been all across the country meeting and speaking with young Muslims, and there is this feeling of a caliphate, the need to have some kind of utopian government that's different from our own, and support for that caliphate still exists. And for as long as that narrative is still alive, we will have more Shamima Begum. So if Shamima Begum wants to come back here, we haven't seen, I don't think, enough remorse for her actions or enough love displayed for this country and its people. And therefore, as things stand, she should not be allowed back into the UK.
So, Ed, before I bring in Yasmin, she shouldn't be allowed back in. So what do you think should happen to her then?
I think she should, one of the things that hasn't happened, interestingly, is be given a robust interview on questions of where is she in relation to her belief in a caliphate? Where is she in relation to her loyalty to her country? Where is she in relation to the religious obligation that she has to fight jihad? She said as late as 2 years ago that she believes in some British values. That's just not good enough, because it's no longer about Shamima Begum. It's about others who have gone and fought for terrorism abroad. Previously, we've seen people who were with Guantanamo Bay and with the Afghan Taliban and Al-Qaeda previously come back to the UK and still retain an anti-Israeli, anti-West attitude. My fear is she comes back, she becomes a hero. And I document this in my book, that we have this real problem of people still feeling affiliation psychologically, philosophically, with a whole different entity. And she's just an outcome of that mindset. And for as long as she believes all of those things and upholds that pro-Islamist state attitude, she should not be back. What we could do for her, I think, at a push, is get her out of that camp. Now, whether that's done privately by sympathetic individuals and put her up in a home somewhere in Turkey, but I don't think she's ready to come back to the UK. She poses a serious threat to millions of British nationals, and she strengthens the pro-ISIS, pro-caliphate narrative that poses a threat to Western civilization itself. And therefore, we should be careful about what we do with individuals like Shamima and many others.
So, Ed, I'm joined by journalist and broadcaster Yasmin Alibhai-Brown. You're shaking your head there. Do you disagree with Ed?
Yes, I do. I do. I really admired Ed, who, never forget, Ed was an extremist himself at one time. And he wrote a fabulous book about his journey of learning about how not to be an extremist and how to shed some of those values. And he was given a chance to make that journey. And this girl was a young child. These were children who were brainwashed and and they did what they did, and most of them are dead. And I think there should be much more thought given. Ed has said, and I do admire his first book, and I have admired him in the past. I think this book is shabby, but we won't go there. But what I think is important is my charity produced a report on young Muslims just 5 months ago, called The Inner Lives of Troubled Young Muslims. And yes, he's right. Some of them are caught up in these narratives, but others are simply deeply unhappy. They're going through these typical teenage crises about sex, about being gay, about not being understood, and we need to be giving them much more of a life chance. And that's what I think we should do with her. She should come here, she should be tried, she should be imprisoned, and she should be allowed to rehabilitate. We can't leave her to die in this camp.
in a second, I need to give Ed certainly a right to reply on that. But before I do, Yasmin, I want to challenge you myself. I've been a teenage girl with angst and, you know, sadness, or all the things that you've just described then. I've never once considered going to join a deaf cult.
Yeah.
So those things are not excuses.
But not all of them do. I mean, especially
But we're
the
talking
girls.
about this specifically, this
but
girl.
you know, actually in our report, we've got a detailed story of how this happened. I'm not saying she's blameless at all. I'm not saying that. I think she should be tried and sent to prison and re-educated. But what I am saying is that this narrative isn't gripping every young Muslim in this country. We've moved a long way from when this was largely true, that young Muslims were completely captured by these narratives. Now you find that they're torn between very conservative elders and a society which views them with suspicion. The number of gay Muslims who have gone to join
Yasmin,
these jihadis. I want there to be more compassion, Ed. I want there to be more compassion from you.
Yes, but there's a time and place for compassion. You don't be compassionate towards people who've not only witnessed but have been part of beheading British nationals. Yasmin, you speak about gay Muslims, jolly good, but we've got 42,000 activists of Islamist organizations that are being monitored by our secret services as we speak now. And that's a real issue. And this is the problem, Yasmin, with all respect. You can't draw moral parallels between, you know, someone like me and others who were radicalized in our younger days. And we've spoken out against it. We've condemned it.
But you went on a journey.
You
went on a journey. You're denying that people can change.
No, but that's not the point. Yes, absolutely. And all I'm asking for, therefore, in that spirit is let's have Shamima openly condemn the need for a caliphate, the jihad for a caliphate, the moving from England to another country to support the caliphate. And let's have her show some love and loyalty to England. We haven't seen that yet. And in the absence of all of that, I think it's just naive of us to say, oh, let's just let her back in. I'm saying she should be out of that camp, but I don't think she's earned her right to be back in the UK yet, because it's a privilege to be in the UK and it's not an inherent right.
Sorry, I don't agree with you on that. I think I have the right to be in this country. I'm talking about me now. And I have the right not to be totally loyal to every aspect of it, because that's what a real democracy is.
But hang on, your disloyalty...
No, I don't feel loyal to the whole idea of Britain, the way he's argued in his book, that, you know, we should pray for the country. I'm not. As you know, all my writing is about, you know, the bad stuff that goes on.
But your disloyalty, presumably, isn't going to potentially harm
No, I
other
would never
people.
harm anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And Ed knows, and you should know, I have written for over 30 years about extremism and people who oppress their own children, oppress women in the family. I have written about that. I've condemned them. But I think to take this kind of strange approach that we don't have the right to be here, that we are here on sufferance, it's just plain wrong to me. She's a citizen. She is a citizen and she was a child. And that's, I think, we need to know why she did it, and she needs to pay for it, but you can't leave her hanging out there to die in a camp. And other European countries have taken some of these people back and are re-educating them.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I absolutely agree with Ed here. Ed, if I just bring you back, I know you've written a book, Among the Mosques. You described this as a journey across Muslim Britain. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I spent about 2 years going across the country, and I've got to say that there are lots and lots of good stories, Michelle. I mean, Yasmin's right. There are, for example, mosques in Belfast that are run by women, mosques in Edinburgh where, you know, it's heartwarming to see young, gay and other Muslims, you know, openly being themselves. But at the same time, we have got to be alert to the fact that, I mean, where I disagree and part ways with Yasmin is that, you know, we can't just sit back and let 3 or 4 million Muslims just say, we will tolerate extremism, institutional misogyny, we will tolerate disloyalty in our midst. And, Yasmin, with all respect, can't walk into Dewsbury Mosque because she's not dressed the right way, but she can walk into a mosque in Cairo or in Istanbul. It doesn't matter how she's dressed. We can't allow for that to happen in large parts of our country. So in Blackburn, Dewsbury, Bolton, Rochdale, Manchester, Birmingham, and in parts of London, I found a real separatism, a real dislike for elements of Britain, and more worryingly, aiming towards a sense of legal separatism, best expanded by the evidence of, getting these so-called Sharia marriages done, which are not registered in the English common law tradition. So there's an emergence of a separate legal system. My only worry is that if we don't wake up to all of this now, we are sleepwalking, Michelle, into a situation where, by the year 2050 or so, we will have in excess of 10 million Muslims in the country. By then, over 25 different constituencies, political constituencies, change dynamics and become Muslim majority. What's the argument at that point? That if there's a demand for separate laws, separate legislation, separatism in other forms, will we just sit back and say, oh, we mustn't be racist, we must just allow for these things to happen? Or do we get a grip of the situation now and say, national loyalty comes over and above communalism? I'm a British national, Yasmin's a British national. That's what binds us with you, Michelle, and others. Not that, someone's gay and someone's female and someone's black or someone's white. We've got to stop focusing on our differences and start coming together as citizens and subjects under the same English common law tradition. Because if we break that bond, what we're left with is these tribal divisions of judging each other on the basis of our gender, our sexuality, our faith, and our race. And where that leads to is to a very dark and divided place. And that's why it's vitally important that we maintain the inheritance that we've been given by people who fought in 2 world wars, including, if I may say so, millions of Muslims from India and elsewhere. So this is not a racist argument. In fact, it's an argument to unite all of us on the basis of love and loyalty to our country.